Thank you, Daniela. Now, time for the headliner, brought to you by Miller Lite. And let's bring in a special assistant to the general manager, Al Avila, and former Tigers manager, longtime Major League manager. And that, of course, is Jim Leyland. Jim, thanks for joining us on the headliner today. I wanted to go back to the very beginning for you because I have always considered you a Tiger, even though you were in Pittsburgh. And I know that you were Tony La Russa's third base coach as the White Sox. I've always equated you with the Detroit Tigers. So I want to go back to September of 1963 when a young man from Perrysburg, Ohio, you signed with the Tigers. What was that day like? Because I think from that moment on, you've always been a Tiger, and maybe I'm overstating it.
Well, I think, it was a big thrill, obviously. I was actually a Cleveland Indians fan growing up, but in those days, I signed before they had the baseball draft, so you could sign with anybody. I really wasn't in demand by too many teams, so it was just a big thrill to sign with Detroit. And I was a little gullible when I signed with them. I thought, geez, I'm gonna play in the big leagues, and it didn't take me very long to figure out I wasn't going to. When I got to spring training and saw all the competition, I realized at a very early point in my career that I was not going to make it as a player. But as you say, I went on to spend 18 consecutive years with the Detroit Tigers, 7 as a player or player coach, and then I managed for them 11 years. So I was with the Detroit Tigers 18 straight years to start out my professional career.
Well, that's a great story. I want to go back to, as corny as this sounds, when you were named Tigers manager on October 4th, 2005, and you had obviously had an illustrious career, won a world championship with the Marlins, our legend as Pittsburgh Pirate manager. Did you feel that my career has now come full circle, that I was meant to be in the Old English D managing this ball club?
Yeah, I did. I really did. It was really exciting for me. I don't know if I'd have been that much excited about maybe taking another team at that point, although I felt like I was ready to come back to manage after being out 6 years. But it just kind of fell in place, and I thought, it took me a long time, but I finally I'm going to get the opportunity to manage the Tigers. When I was there, obviously Sparky Anderson was there, so I certainly wasn't going to replace him. And so I had to wait a long time, but when Dave Dombrowski called me and asked me to come to Detroit to interview me, I was absolutely thrilled. I felt like my baseball career had really come full cycle. And, this was a job. I never really thought about managing the Tigers when I first started managing the minor leagues. But I did think about managing the Tigers when I got to Evansville after a couple of years. I thought, I'd like to manage in the big leagues. It'd be a thrill to manage the Tigers. But obviously they had one of the greatest managers of all time in the position at that time. So I wasn't going to get that opportunity. So I eventually moved on to go with the White Sox, and then some opportunities as far as managing opened up for me.
You look at taking the club over for the 2006 season. In 2003, obviously the Tigers struggled. They set the American League record for losses with 119. But from that point on, they had acquired some talent. And you just mentioned Sparky Anderson. In that 2006 season, Sparky used to say, I know what kind of club I have at the 40-game mark. I can tell you if we're going to be contending, if we're not. I just get that feeling. Was there a moment in 2006 where it came to you that not only are this is a pretty good ball club. We're not only above 500. This is a team that could actually make some noise during the season.
I actually felt that way in spring training, to be honest with you. I got to know the players. We started to develop a relationship. I think we instilled some confidence in those players that were talented players. Weren't quite sure how to win yet. I think they were a little shy about it. They weren't really quite ready to take that step forward, maybe as an entire team. But there was plenty of talent on that team, and I felt like we put some more talent in that team when we added Verlander and Zamaya, and I think the players saw that, and I think the energy started to really pick up in spring training, and I think the players started to actually get some confidence in spring training, and then we got off to a good start. Somebody said, were you surprised you got off to a good start? I said, no, I was not. I thought we would get off to a good start. I thought we were a very talented team, and I thought we had an opportunity to do something. I won't say over the winter before I went to my first spring training with it, but once I got into spring training and started talking with the players and dealing with the players and listening to the players and watching them perform, I felt really good going into the 2006 season. Now, did I know we were going to go to the World Series? No, I did not. But I thought that we would have a really good year, and I thought that could be a team that started to turn around in Detroit. And as it turned out, it was definitely the team that turned baseball around in Detroit.
Well, they certainly did. Yeah, you mentioned Justin Verlander and Joel Zumaya. They were both rookie pitchers. Was it a difficult sell for you to go to Dave Dombrowski, who obviously loved power arms? He drafted enough here in Detroit, but was it difficult for you to say, "Hey, I want to take these two young pitchers with me north to Detroit"?
When I took the job, I asked Dave, I said, "Are you going to let me take the guys I want to take?" He said, "Well, within reason." So when we talked about that early in the spring training, he said, "Well, I'm not quite sure." I told him I wanted those guys. He said, "Well, we'll see." He said, I'm not quite sure because you don't know what they're going to do." And I remember saying, "No, I don't know what they're going to do for sure, but I do know what the guys that we've had in the past are going to do, and it hadn't been too good for the last 13 years here. So I think let's try something new because I'm a big believer in talent, and those guys had talent, and I believe in that. I believe in the talent over the experience. Now, if you got both, that's great. Obviously, it's better, but when you have talent like that, that's going to surface. That's going to get the job done for the most part. So I was very confident about it. Dave was great about it. He agreed 100% as the spring went on that those guys should be on the team. And I think that, we really had a good bullpen. I think the Tigers have been accused of not having a very good bullpen most of those years. But that particular year, we had Todd Jones, a really good, outstanding veteran closer. We had Fernando Rodney, who's still pitching and been really a workhorse. We had Grilly, who took good innings for us, Jamie Walker, Zumaya. I mean, that was really a good bullpen. And I think Zumaya kind of was the standout in that bullpen, even though he wasn't a closer or anything. But people oohed and awed when he came in the game. I think he gave some electricity to the crowd because of the 100-mile-an-hour fastball plus at times. So it was all. And Verlander was throwing 99, 100, and with good breaking ball and a changeup. So I think those guys really instilled some energy, not only in our players, but in our crowd and in the city of Detroit.
Jim, all week, Fox Sports Detroit is featuring games from the 2006 season, their Tiger series. And I know they're going to have the Cubs. They're having the clinching game in 2006 against Kansas City. But what I'm really kind of curious about is that I could just tell by the way you reacted after game one that you kind of knew that your team was poised and ready to defeat the vaunted Yankees.
I think you're probably right. People in New York didn't expect that from the Tigers. But I think, especially after we lost game one, I think they were probably on cruise control, the fans in New York and everything. And I think maybe one of the best things that were happening, we got rained out the next night. And we came back and beat them in a day game. I remember Jamie Walker getting a double play ball off Cano, I think in the sixth inning, the game that Verlander started. And when we won that game in New York, I think it just, our chest swelled a little bit, and I think they thought, okay, we'll go to Detroit, we'll end this thing. But our guys were pumped up, and I think that it's funny because when I took the job in Detroit in 2005, I wrote the team a letter, and I mentioned something about, I want our team. I don't want us cocky or arrogant or anything, but I want our team to take the field with a little swagger, like we're pretty good, and not be half stepping out on the field. Let's get after it. Let's stick our chest out and let's go out and let people know that we're a good team and we got a chance to win. And I wanted that. I wanted that bounce in our step, and I think our guys showed that. And I think being that we played the Yankees, it happened to be that we played them in the playoffs. It kind of came to pass what happened, really, to be honest with you. And it was and the other thing is it was a big thrill for us because the Yankees, let's face it, they've always kind of been the measuring stick of excellence and probably still are. But so to defeat them in the first round of the playoffs, and we went on obviously to win 7 straight playoff games, and then of course, did not perform well in the World Series.
Right. I want to go to the American League Championship Series against Oakland. Obviously, the moment that stands out. I mean, you swept the A's, and Justin Verlander was doing his thing and was establishing himself as a great postseason pitcher in the playoffs. At that point, but Maglio Ordonez's home run in Game 4, that is one of those moments that will live in Tigers history. I could have just imagined what was going through your mind when you realized, my gosh, this club that only a couple of seasons before was not very good is suddenly in the World Series.
The electricity in the crowd that day when Maglio hit the home run was absolutely unbelievable. But I think as the season went on, that electricity picked up in the communities, the outlying communities, Detroit. Everywhere you went, people were wearing a Tiger hat, a Tiger jersey, a sweatshirt, some type of Tiger, memorabilia. So it was picking up all along the way. And that just kind of climaxed it. I wish we'd have waited another couple of weeks and got the World Series, because that would have been even more unbelievable. But I think Maglio's home run, I don't think I've ever seen a stadium more electric than Comerica Park was that day when Maglio hit the home run off Houston Street. I think it was just unbelievable. It was a relief, but I think it was, we were all pumped up because we had accomplished something. We felt like going into the season, we'd be good. We didn't know we'd get that far, but as it went on, we started to believe in ourselves more. And I think that kind of, put the exclamation point on it.
I want to go to the 2020 Tigers. I know that you were down in spring training. Everything is on pause right now. Do you see maybe some similarities to the 2020 team, or what the Tigers are trying to do right now and what they did after the 2003 season, that there is, the light at the end of the tunnel here?
Well, I don't think there's any question that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, back then they went out and got Pudge Rodriguez and Magno Ordonez, so we're not in that mode right now. We're more in the development mode and getting the players that we have better. And then when we feel we're at that point, like, we picked up Crone this year and Scoops this year. So, we're definitely making progress. But I think when the right time comes, I think Chris was going to step up and go out and try to put the finishing touches on it. So it's a little bit the same, but yet it's a little bit different. I think we have more power arm pitching prospects than we did when I came in 2006. I mean, we had Verlander and Zabaya, but not a whole lot else at the time. So I think right now we have a core of young pitching prospects that are better than when I came. What we need to do is we need to have a few more impact players. The Riley Green is a young kid, but he's down pretty low right now, but I understand that. But I wish we had a few more really impact bats at the higher levels. We got some good players. I don't want to sound like I'm being critical, because I'm not. We got some good players, but I'm talking about a big difference maker, like the infusion of a Miguel Cabrera coming up to the big leagues, or a Mike Trout. We don't really have that kind of guy right now. I think we could in the future, and depending on a draft this year, who knows what's going to happen. But I think we do need a couple more position players that are really impact bats, and actually maybe even two-way players. And what I mean by that as an impact bat, but also a good defensive player. So I love two-way players. I love players that could, produce offensively, but I also love players that could play defense and play it good. So we need a few more of those, but we're really on the right track. I don't think there's any question about that. I think, the Illiches have always showed that they'll step up when the time comes if they think the time's right. I think we're getting closer to that. Are we there right this minute? No, but I think we're getting a lot closer.
Jim, my final question for you is, obviously a sad note, but I know that you go back with Mr. Tiger, Al Kaline, since 1964. His recent passing, I think we've all, become reflective. And, I look back, I don't remember, my whole childhood was Al Kaline. And I'm just kind of curious, maybe your thoughts and memories of Mr. Tiger.
Well, I had dinner with him. I was fortunate to have dinner with him a couple of nights before he went home from spring training this year. And I felt like deep inside, I had this feeling that he was almost saying goodbye. And I think he was. We had a wonderful dinner. He and his wife, Louise, and I had dinner in Lakeland. And we just laughed and talked about old times and everything. And when we left that night, he said, give me a hug, Jim. And I gave him a hug. He said, thanks for being my friend all these years. And I had a weird feeling when I went back to my room. I thought, this almost sounded like goodbye. And I think it probably was. So, everybody called him Mr. Tiger. Like I said, I called him Mr. Gentleman. He was a gentleman on and off the field. He was a fierce competitor. He is Mr. Tiger. There's no question about it. And he will forever be remembered as Mr. Tiger, which I think is a good thing. So, and I think he's being acknowledged. He's on the wall there in Detroit, statue, whatever it may be. So, Al was just a wonderful guy and a wonderful ball player.
Yeah, he certainly was. On that note, Jim, I just want to say thank you for joining us on the Headliner. I really appreciate it. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And I just want to say just thank you for everything that you've done for this Tiger organization over the years. all the way back to when you were you signed in 1963 till today. I mean, you're truly a Tiger, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Jim.
Well, I appreciate the Tigers having me. I really enjoyed it in Detroit. Thank you.
There you have it. That is Jim Leyland on the Headliner, brought to you by Miller Lite, the original light beer with great taste and only 96 calories, available for delivery. Daniela, what can you say? Jim and Leyland, what a gentleman on and off the field.